Alrighty.
Yeah, we are back, probably.
Hopefully. Sorry about that. I have a computer that hates when I stream, apparently. It used to do this when I was a Twitch streamer, which is not a small part of the reason that I stopped streaming for so long. And yeah, so I'm going to try and get everything reset up. Uh, so appreciate anyone's patience who is potentially joining. Just give me a moment. Would you be able to send another invite, my good sir?
You bet.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's so laggy. That leaves me to be a bit concerned.
Mhm.
And you sent an invite? Yes, you did.
Mhm.
Play game. Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna Alt Tab real quick, and then I'll go over to OBS, set it up for sledding game. Okay. Give me 1 second. I think my controller's unplugged.
Mhm.
I apparently lost connection to your lobby.
Ah, beans.
Okay. Okay. So, now that we are potentially actually streaming this game, I hope that we are streaming this game, we can also now talk about the subject at hand, which is um, I was watching a video from a fellow creator, the Classic Halo Commentary channel, which was also gracious enough to host me on an episode of their show. Uh, I guess over the weekend. We recorded it a week prior. I'm also indefinitely loading, so I don't know if I just have an internet problem or if your lobby's not doing any good.
Says you're coming in.
Okay, it's just taking a while. Um, but so he made a video, and that was how I found out about all this. Having two kids means that I don't really follow gaming as close as I used to, but I guess Sony is no longer going to be printing physical discs. They won't be doing that moving forward after the beginning of 2028. And I just had a huge mix of emotions. I've seen it's just like I don't even have any social media accounts outside of YouTube, and even just on YouTube, it's just blowing up. Like every video that I'm seeing on the platform is just people talking about how upset they are about this news. And not that I necessarily think that I have any crazy insight or necessarily unique opinion that's going to help shape the public sentiment about this, but this kind of just feels like one of those few times where I just kind of really can't stay silent on it. Um, and I can't just talk into a void, so I asked my buddy Extra Shoddy to jump on a stream with me, and we can potentially play a video game if this thing ever loads while we.
No, this is a loading game simulator. I tricked you.
Haha. I'm the one that asked if we could play the game. You tricked me into playing it.
But
Um,
no, it is interesting the specific wording of it that they're not going to be printing any more discs for the game. I don't think that means that like all consoles are all digital going forward now, because I imagine that like the Just Dance and the Wii, there's going to be some third-party title that keeps getting printed, keeps getting bought, and keeps being kind of relevant in the physical space for some ungodly reason. And it'll just work. It'll keep selling games, and no one will really understand why, but it'll be there. And that's kind of my 2 cents on the issue. Like, there's been a sea change in the midst of things, but somewhere out there, someone's grandma is going to look for a very specific game, and for whatever reason, that being available on a next gen console is going to matter. And it'll sell, apparently, even if Sony doesn't think it's viable. But I think the reason that this news like hit hard is the 1-2 gut punch of, hey, Sony got rid of a huge amount of media on their service for every user, not just delisting and preventing people from buying it, but like cutting off access to the people who bought it, and then announcing that they're not going to be making physical game media anymore. So that combined like combo, let's hope it's not a three-piece combo, is I think why everyone's a little bit antsy, even if the writing's been on the wall for either of these things for a while now.
Well, and that's the even crazier part of it is just the amount of tone deaf, just completely missing what the public sentiment about this was going to be. Like, even in a vacuum, I think this would have been pretty bad news. And I'm one of the people that my tinfoil hat theory is the Xbox One and the PS4, if I remember correctly, they were both announced at E3 in like 2013, I want to say.
That sounds about right. Probably 2014, honestly.
I think they released in 2014. Maybe they released in 2015. I don't remember. But what I do remember is that the announcements were staggered. One day was for Microsoft and one day was for PlayStation. And Xbox went first. And my tinfoil hat theory for the last, I don't know, let's call it 13 years, has been that if Sony had gone first, we would have seen a higher priced PS4. We would have seen DRM in video games, etc. Yeah, I see that you're sharing to me over Discord.
Okay, good. I forgot I was still streaming to you, so I can't pretend this is somehow a surprise.
No, but like I remember the video, the used game instructional video that PlayStation posted. I remember when that came out, and all I could think to myself was, I know for a fact that Sony had this idea of like, oh, actually, let's undercut the Xbox by, like, they had the price point of $400 and not doing the DRM in their back pocket in case they needed to fall back on it. I have no doubt in my mind that they had every intention of actually selling the PlayStation 4 at a higher price, and that they were going to have some level of DRM and probably trying to go to some extent digital only. But they saw the immediate backlash that Xbox got for the price and for all that stuff, and they pulled the trump card of, okay, actually we'll sell this thing for cheaper, we'll do all this kind of stuff. And then they started filming those PR things, like that video. I know we don't have it on the stream. I don't really want to go through the headache of trying to set up playing it on the stream or anything like that, but and ever since then, like, we've slowly seen the march towards this current announcement. I mean, like, the PT demo, I think, is like an amazing example of, they had this thing on the storefront, you could download it, and then when they delisted it, the only way for you to play that game was to buy somebody's PlayStation 4 and play it on that PS4. And obviously that's, in today's day and age, that's not even like an extreme example. And outside of Sony, who has slowly been trying to encourage people to buy digital only, even though really, as far as I'm concerned, the incentive's not really there, because it's not any cheaper to buy it digital unless they're doing a sale. And as far as I'm aware, I don't necessarily jump on the PlayStation Store very often, but they don't do sales nearly to the extent that Steam does. But I think of things like Netflix where they lose licensing and TV shows are spread across 10 different subscription services, or a movie that was on this subscription service is now on this one, and we're basically at the point where we just have cable again, but you're having to pay for 10 different services and you don't actually know what's on any of the services anymore. Or you have Amazon where not only do you have the problems with the Prime Video where you can lose the license to the video that you had, but also them not only delisting Kindle books and removing them from your Kindle, but also I guess there's been instances of books being changed on the
Your
Kindle
book gets
shop.
DLC. They patched out the exploit where there was a slur.
Yeah, like I don't remember. I saw that it was from a video from somebody else, so I, like, take it with a grain of salt. It's coming from another person that I can't verify, but it's a book that came out before Instagram did, and on the Kindle version of the book, to try and quote unquote modernize it, they started talking about things like Snapchat and Instagram and stuff like that in this novel.
I can't believe they put
I'm gonna close out of this
Snapchat
game
in
and try
Pride
again.
and Prejudice.
No, it wasn't Pride
And Prejudice and dick pics.
Let me try launching this game again because it's obviously not working for me.
Yeah. On the subject, it does make it interesting when like physical media, not when I say physical media, I mean the consoles or devices themselves become elusive. Like people selling old shitty Android phones because they had Flappy Bird on it, and there have been
Oh yeah.
so many like goofy like replicas of that game that if you really wanted to play something like that, you are not spoiled for choice. But it's the principle of having something elusive or like unobtainable. And it's the same is true in like a lot of like quote unquote economies, in the sense that in RuneScape you used to be able to drink half a jug of wine, and now you can't anymore. So having a half of a jug of wine is a status symbol, despite having like no real way to display it besides trading someone, like poking them on the shoulder and going like, "Hey, I have half a jug of wine." It's pretty cool, ain't it? And like that's the thing. You like, and eventually those things become like economic markers. It's a recession indicator if they release half jugs of wine into the environment again.
Unfortunately, a lot of RuneScape references are lost on me, but yeah.
Don't worry, someone will get it, and that someone is me.
Well, and I was kind of talking with you off the stream before we started about this, but like, obviously there's a little bit of a hypocritical air about complaining about Sony getting rid of physical media while we're, playing Steam games. Like this is a Steam digital only game, but there was a time where I was buying a couple PC games on disc. Like I had World of Warcraft, I had the StarCraft Battle Chest. Somewhere in this house I still have my copy of StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty, but like when I finally built my first PC, all I had was Steam. So like I came into the Steam ecosystem fully aware of what I was getting myself into, whereas Sony's built a lineage of physical media, and even if their predominant sales are digital, it doesn't help anybody by only doing digital, right? Like it doesn't hurt anybody to also sell it physically, other than the fact that they have to do production costs, like the printing of the discs, the making of the jewel cases. They already got rid of the freaking game manuals, which I can't remember the last game I bought that had a game manual. And I remember even when they still had them, it was like, it was starting to get to the point where it was just like a cosmetic sheet of paper that was in there. It wasn't like the beautiful manual that had all this artwork and stuff in it. But
no, you gotta buy like the manual separate, especially if games are designed around them, like Tunic. And we'll have a lot to talk about that when I eventually get you to play the game in its entirety.
Yeah,
but
I started
on the side
it.
note, there's another foray into the all-digital market that Sony's already done, and that was the PSP Go that came out around 2009.
I
where
forgot
they
about that.
explicitly released a bunch of games with it to go like super digital with it. Or what am I trying to say? They released it, or at least relaunched the console with 10 like free games that came with it. And this was a thing that I think works well for a little bit because the PSP was such like a digital friendly console. And that was because of piracy. And they tried it again with the PSP Vita, but the thing that's kind of always screwed over the PSP's like entries into mobile markets is the worst proprietary like systems you can imagine. You remember those UMD discs and how they were kind of like clunky, especially in comparison to like a DS cartridge or a Game Boy Advance cartridge.
Yeah, no, I remember the UMDs for sure.
And the proprietary SD cards they released for the Vita. So if you wanted to like invest in the ecosystem, you had to like invest in their proprietary nonsense. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was high quality, but the thing is like, no, you're trying to double dip, and the thing you're double dipping with isn't good. You have made the experience worse for us trying to engage with the ecosystem. So like even if it is all digital, it has to like have something that makes you want to be here and do all this stuff. And like I think the best example of like stuff working like that was on the Wii and Wii U, not digital only consoles, but something that gave you a reason to kind of engage with their nonsense, as it were. Stand by, I'm entering a lobby. Hello.
Nice. We finally got this thing working. Let me.
Yeah, I'm guessing my connection was just cursed.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. I just got tired of sitting at a loading screen. Okay. Let me. Now that we finally have this thing working.
Let me get something real quick.
Okay, hold on. I'm also gonna be gone for just 5 seconds. I'm grabbing a soda.
Okay. Welcome to the intermediary corner, where nothing particularly happens. But while Chris, the quarter life burnout, is getting some soda, I return
All right, I'm back.
with a coffee.
What the hell are you talking about?
I guess you're just gonna have to watch The Void to find out. Step into the VOD.
Welcome.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Sorry, I got a message on Discord and I was trying to figure out who sent it to me.
Oh no. Oh no. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that's like really, I don't know if I would say depressing about all this news, but you've had to hear about like my depression of the poor choices I made as a youngin', selling my games to GameStop so I could get new games, and how I wish I hadn't done that. Like, there's a lot of games that I don't have access to anymore. Like, somewhere in this world is my copy of Pokemon White 2 that I gave to somebody, and then that person swears on his mother's grave that I didn't give it to him, even though I recall him leaving my house with it. But I thought I was never going to play it again, and I was dumb, and so I gave it to him. I'm pretty sure my copy of Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness was sold to a GameStop at some point, which is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done. I don't know. I don't have any PS2 games now because all my PS2 games got sold once I had a Xbox 360. I was like, well, how am I going to afford these 360 games without selling my copy of Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and Final Fantasy 10 and all that stuff? And you know, that's my fault, right? Like, I made the dumb decision to go do that. The problem that I have with this is it kind of feels like it's just taken out of your hands. You're not really given a choice in the matter. Like, once Sony decides, because here's the thing, like, I think you mentioned at the beginning of the stream that, whatchamacallit, that it's maybe like third-party people will still be printing discs. It's just that Sony's not going to be doing it anymore. But realistically, they're doing this so that they don't have to put a disc.
Yeah.
You just freaking slid in.
Here comes the disc.
Man, you're too quick. But they seemed like they all but wanted the PS5 to have a disc drive. Like, I'm pretty sure they wanted the PS5 to be digital only, and they begrudgingly threw a disc drive on at the last second.
Yeah, that's why they had an overpriced alternative that they knew the old heads would go for. Old heads including me if I still bought consoles.
When I went and bought my PS5, I bought it after they had announced the 30th anniversary version of the PS5. And the only reason I didn't buy the 30th anniversary version was it didn't come with a disc drive. And it cost more, or no, I think it cost the same amount as the PS5 that had a disc drive. And then you would have to go and spend, I believe it was like 60 or 70 bucks to get the disc drive attachment. And so it was basically, if I wanted the cool gray version that evoked the nostalgia of the PS1 that looked, if somebody reimagined the PlayStation 1 to look like a Wi-Fi router, if I wanted that, I would have to pay $100 extra over just getting the white version, which realistically my wife's gonna have me hide it behind the TV anyway, so I'm not even gonna see it. So might as well just get the white one. But all that to say, like, there's not a doubt in my mind that the PlayStation 6 is not going to have a disc drive. And realistically, I watched Happy Console Gamer. He made a video about it as well. I really like his stuff, and you could tell how flustered he was about everything because he's a huge game collector. But there's just, like, he read more of the post, so there was some details he had that I wasn't privy to before his video. And I don't get the impression at all that there's even going to be an option for, like, a third-party printing of discs for, like, the PS5. It kind of comes off as, like, there will be no PS5 discs, period, after 2028. Which, obviously, if you...
No.
Huh? Blu-ray.
I was going to make a stupid joke, but I couldn't figure out a punchline.
Stevie
Blu-ray?
Ray?
I hardly know her.
Okay.
All right, joke secured. Carry on.
That's my quota for the day.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I ran into a tree. I'm not paying, like, any attention. I don't know. It just... I've seen a lot of people talking about how if we raise enough hell about it and enough people make enough discourse online, there's probably going to be a course correction, and how there's all these people who are slowly starting to go to a more physical media just lifestyle. But I think it's one of those scenarios where it's like the people who are making the videos complaining about it also probably have algorithms that drive them to more videos of people who think the same way as them. And I do feel like the more common opinion is still digital is convenient, even though it has its shortcomings.
Yeah,
and that
I would not have bought hundreds of games on Steam if I did not believe in that ethos to some extent.
Well, even if it's just like, I mean, I don't know about your Steam wish list, but I would say probably like 40% of my wish list is 90% off right now. Like, I haven't seen a Steam sale that was this crazy in a while, which I do wonder how much of it comes from the significantly higher priced Steam machines than we thought they were going to be. And so there's like them trying to get more people into the ecosystem. But
well, I mean, most of those aren't Valve games. I don't think they actually have, like, a stake in like how most like games go on sale. I'm
But
sure a lot of people had planned for it to like coincide with the Steam Machine release, but the fact that it's like kind of retail for what we used to consider would be like kind of overpriced for a gaming PC, but might be the new normal now, is well, it's all kinds of disheartening. It just feels like everything on all sides is getting kind of crappier if you want either physical media or digital media.
well, and I guess my whole reason for even bringing that up is just I think there's a lot of people who, even though they understand like you're only renting the stuff that you're paying for on these platforms, and there's going to come a day where it can be revoked. Like my mentality on Steam now is I do not buy full price games. Like the last game I paid full price for that wasn't a physical disc was Monster Hunter Wilds, and I don't know if people on this channel know my trials and tribulations with that PC port of the game. I still haven't played it because my first month of trying to play that game was I would get to the main menu and then the game would crash. Even though I have a RTX 3080 Ti, 32 gigs of RAM, like I think I have an i9 processor if I remember correctly. Like I have a good PC. I built it 6 months prior to the game coming out, and it just wouldn't run until the game had been out for about a month. I finally tried it after a month and it worked, but by that point I had so much ill will towards the game, I just decided, nah, I'm just gonna keep playing Monster Hunter Rise and Generations, and eventually I'll get into playing Iceborne, but I saw that. But like, I think there are a lot of people who are just like, well, it's still worth the convenience. It's the same as the people who kind of like, even though it's having them go further and further into debt, they're ordering DoorDash all the time, or like they're willing to pay the convenience fees for taking an Uber everywhere instead of like buying a car or whatever, because the mentality is just to go for convenience rather than like thinking for the long term about something. And I'm not trying to say that in like a bashing public sentiment. Like I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with ordering DoorDash or using rideshare apps instead of owning a car and having to pay for the insurance and all that kind of stuff. But like I feel like a lot of the public sentiment is more of like, well, if I get 5 to 10 years of enjoyment out of this thing that I paid for, is it really that big of a deal that I don't have access to it anymore? Not really thinking about like the kind of dystopian side of it, where
You don't
it's
really own what you have and what you've paid for.
well, you don't own what you have, but it's also like, who's to say what is like why it gets taken down? Like somebody might just decide this isn't a game you're allowed to play because we don't like the things that it says. This isn't a book you're not allowed to read because we don't like the things that they say in the book. Or we've decided that this movie or TV show promotes anti-American sentimentism, so we're pulling it from all platforms. Like, to me, it's I think the real reason is, like, for the short term for Sony, it's they want to save money on printing discs, especially when they're only selling to 20% of their consumers physically, which I have a feeling that the number's going to drop even more, because I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of people like me where they've maybe bought 1 or 2 digital games. Like I bought Gran Turismo, I think it's 7 on PS5. I bought that digitally because it was $20 and I wanted to play Gran Turismo. And then I have Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Ace Combat, I think Ace Combat 7. Those are the 3 digital games I have on PS5. Everything else is a disc PS4 or PS5 game. And now that they are saying that you can never buy a disc again, they are not just losing me as one of their 20% purchases, they are also losing me as one of their 80% purchases, because I'm just not going to get a PS6 because I don't want to be locked into a digital only ecosystem outside of Steam. And even Steam, I have my list of concerns, but again, I kind of just accepted that, and for whatever reason, I'm just not wanting to accept it right now.
Yeah.
Also, we rode the ski lift down instead of sledding.
Listen, we don't have the energy. We're old men. We'll leave the sledding to the youngins until we get back up.
we needed to see what we were getting ourselves into before we slid.
This isn't a Ferris wheel. This is a Bueller wheel. On some level, there was a point I was going to make, I think, about that point of convenience. And I don't think it's even just convenience. It's like the huge, like, upfront cost of the stuff you're talking about, like getting even a used car, building up the experience of working with it, learning how to cook for real.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not things that happen overnight. Those are things that, like, you save up for or build the skills up over the course of, like, weeks or months. Probably months, really. And that's a big ask for something you don't know you want. So the opportunity cost isn't just convenience. It's like almost like a safety measure. Hold on. I'm sorry, I don't have a match.
Does it tell you need one?
I don't know, and I don't know what I'd use otherwise. And I can't use a hammer to hit it. But I digress. My point being that I think there isn't, like, kind of the cultural norm surrounding, like, a car or owning your own car that there used to be, at least in certain necks of the woods. Like, did you grow up with your dad? Oh, figured it out. Did you grow up with your dad telling you, son, I'm gonna learn you how to have a car and repair it and all that? Because I didn't have that. And I don't know if that's a cultural shift of, like, my dad just getting used to saying, yeah, whatever, the mechanic will figure out. And that goes back to that, like, choice of convenience over really learning the nitty-gritty of it, because no one in my family is that handy, at least on my dad's side. But
I mean, I didn't grow up with my dad.
Yeah. That's the first and more obvious answer. But I'd say, like, in your family and extended family, was that, like, culture surrounding having your own stuff and knowing it like the back of your hand and how to maintain it, was that kind of in place for you? Because it wasn't for me. It was
to an extent. My mom wanted that because that was for her and her brothers and stuff. The problem that she ran into is just, again, like, my dad lived on the other side of the state. They got divorced when I was a baby, and my uncles would try to show me stuff, but it's different when it's the person that's living in your home versus the guy that you see every couple months.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm really jealous of, because I do know a lot of people who had that kind of a relationship with their dad, and they now know how to work on cars. I've always wanted to know how to work on cars. I really love cars and car culture. It's a lot of the reason that I studied mechanical engineering, but I grew up in a below good means household. So, like,
Yeah.
buying cars was not really a thing that we could do, and then I didn't have somebody that could
do.
Yeah, and then we just I didn't have anybody to even show me the ropes. Like, my uncle that was in Arlington, he tried teaching me how to drive stick when I lived in Arlington, and he did a decent job, but it was like, at that point I was like, I'm 23 and I'm seeing you like once every 4 months to do a 30-minute drive. Like, there's just not, and I don't own a car that has a manual transmission, so, like, I'm getting the hang of it in the time that we're doing it, and then I don't have anything to practice with, so I was basically starting over from ground zero.
The way you're talking about it kind of reminds me about how people talk about, like, acquiring a language, not just studying and learning it, but, like, using it in day-to-day life. to where the words and such become natural to them. And like that in some ways becomes a cultural thing based on like whoever's around who can teach you these things. That's what I'm learning about cooking for myself. Because I remember I got so frustrated the first time I tried to brown beef when I was living in an apartment. I was just
That's
angry for no reason. Like, I know how this is supposed to work. It's heat and the griddle and beef. I'm just not getting it right. And
yeah.
like, there's no one, and I didn't have anyone to show me the ropes because my family was very much in the camp of like, I have done too much shit today. We are getting Pizza Hut, and I just kind of rolled with it. And like, I regret it a little bit going up because I could have shown more initiative in learning things, especially because I was a picky eater. Um, but it is one of those things where like the means are there to gain those skills, but like if it was going to be part of your coming of age where it would have made sense to do that, it didn't happen for one reason or another. So now we're kind of stuck in this weird position where there's a lot of things I'd like to learn how to do, like running a garden in my backyard, in the blistering heat of wherever it is I live that I'm not saying on stream, and learning that like, hey, um, this crazy heat and humidity is not conducive to whatever it is I'm trying to grow. I am watching the living things I brought into my yard suffer and die, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll keep watering them for until they complete. There's no chance. And like I know like very vague ideas like plants need specific nutrients to grow, like potassium and things that aren't potassium, nitrogen. But I wouldn't be able to tell you like what to look for in a plant to know if it's doing well or not because I didn't make the time or have like the culture surrounding it to learn.
Yeah.
In some ways and there's kind of this is complete non sequitur where it's like there's a divide between quote unquote masculine and quote unquote feminine hobbies.
Mm.
Like gardening was something my mom did, and you know, learning how to make a car or doing a science fair was something me and my dad did, and we were both bad at it. Looking back, my dad and I had no idea what the hell we were doing in any like science project we did. And it's a little worrisome that I now have a PhD in STEM.
I constantly think about how like it is nerve-wracking that I have a master's degree in engineering and that there are people who treat me as somewhat of a subject matter expert. Like literally at my company today, I had 2 different meetings where you know, I'm technically one of the more, I don't want to say I'm entry level, but I'm relatively entry level at my company compared to the other software engineers, and I am not a software engineer by academic standing. I am a mechanical engineer. I am self-taught in terms of software. But I had 2 separate meetings today where I had people who have been in this career field for over 20 years going like, all right, man, so where do we go from here? What like basically asking me to completely lead development of our only product. I'm just sitting there like, dude, why are you asking me? You're 50 and you've been doing this since stuff was written in Fortran. Like, why are you asking me what we're gonna do?
Oh my god, I did not like that I landed in the lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I took the cannon of peril and I got attacked by a Yeti.
Oh dear. Oh man.
I bet this game's pretty sick with proximity chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anything obviously to come from just having necessarily rambly discussions about our disdain of the news that came out, but there's also just the part of me that hopes that there's like that little bit of light in the tunnel of if enough people raise their voices and say like, hey, I mean, like for me,
I want to tell someone one day I welded this PS5 together in a cave with a box of scraps, and for that to be a viable way to play those games. But
well,
like I know I don't have the expertise to do so, but I want to believe someone out there does. Someone out there is the Tony Stark of creating a pirated disc drive for PlayStation 5 and pirated discs. Just like a stack of burnt Blu-rays that he's using to install Grand Theft Auto 6 one disc at a time.
I think the thing that's like shaking me about this whole thing is, to some extent, since Iwata's passing, I've felt a slow change in Nintendo. Obviously, like, the first couple years of the Switch were awesome. I still think there's like a ton about the Switch towards the tail end of its life that was amazing, and I think there's still like cool stuff coming out on it, like on the Switch 2, even long after there's been grand changes there. But there's a part of the ethos around the Switch that feels like I'm not really the demographic that they're catering towards anymore. And like, I didn't really become a Nintendo fan until, I'd say, the GameCube. Like, I had a Game Boy and a Game Boy Advance, and I really liked them for Pokemon games, but that was like pretty much all I did on those. They were just Pokemon machines for me. Xbox, I only really was in it in the 360 days. Like, the 360, I didn't own an Xbox. I bought an Xbox One thinking they were going to turn it around, and I sold it like 6 months after I bought it, and then waited for the PS4 Pro to come out. But Sony, I have owned every PlayStation. Sony was the first console I ever played. I remember, like, some of my earliest memories are from my dad's bachelor pad playing Crash Bandicoot and 007 Tomorrow Never Dies on his newly bought PlayStation with his roommate. And like, I think I was like 3 years old, and or maybe I was a little older. I don't remember when the PlayStation came out. I want to say it came out in '96, so that makes sense to me, but maybe it was a little later. But I literally, my earliest memories are with PlayStation. And even though in my head the games that I like playing the most these days are Nintendo games, there is an inseparable like connection that I have with the PlayStation brand. And it's why, like, even though I didn't need a PlayStation 5 and I barely played my PS4, so it was kind of like, well, why am I buying this PS5? It's mainly because I just want a console, so I can play big AAA games on my couch. But it kind of just feels like a big middle finger to people like me, where it's like, yeah, maybe 80% of your sales are still digitally, but I've been buying y'all's shit for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have my original copy of Crash Bandicoot. It's sitting right here. And like, yeah, I sold a lot of my PS2 games. I actually went out and bought a handful of them that were cheap. Like, I now have a different copy of Gran Turismo 3 and Final Fantasy 10 and 12 and Ace Combat 4, and I have a copy of Dragon Quest 8. All of them I bought like in the last 5 years. But I don't know, it
feels like we are watching the sea change happen, and we're not. It's just a bit less disdain for it and more dismay, because the writing's been on the wall in some respects for a long time now. And I think things could go back in the other direction if there was enough like market forces and like consumer ideas. I don't know, consumer demand specifically for that, but the crappy decision is going to happen at some point, and I think Sony's just gambling on like too much other crap is happening for folks to really, really care about it.
Well, and it's just there's the glimmer of hope in my head where you have these companies like Analog and I guess Mod Retro, where they're trying to revive these older consoles, And Mod Retro, to my understanding, they're even like developing new games for the consoles that they make FPGA solutions to.
That's
And
pretty cool.
in my ideal world, you would be able to get like reprints of old games. Like if I don't want to pay Jim Bob from Missouri $300 for his copy of Chibi Robo.
Yeah, no, I want to get Suikoden 2 on Etsy for $30.
Well, like, to me, it's not that crazy of an idea where it's like, if I don't care about the collector side of it, right? Like, I don't care about the idea of if I get a collection of GameCube games or whatever, I don't care if the disc was manufactured in 2004 or if it was manufactured in 2026. But what I will say is I care about playing on a GameCube controller. And the best way to play on a GameCube controller, I know that like you can technically plug a GameCube controller through an adapter that goes into a USB cable into your PC. I've done it, and it works sometimes. Like it works depending on if Mercury's in retrograde, and it's frustrating because it's not like a seamless solution. You know what is a seamless solution is hitting the power button on a GameCube.
Yeah.
And just having your Wavebird plugged into that son of a bitch and just going. And what I would love is if I could pay some company, so long as it's legitimate, I don't want like any shady business or whatever. It would be great if it was like Nintendo sanctioned or Sony sanctioned or Microsoft sanctioned, but I could just pay them X number of dollars, reprint this disc, and I can have a legitimate copy of this thing. And
I want to play Gex on original hardware and have it in a box drawn by Yoshitaka Amano of the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah. Well, and that's also part of the reason why, like, the Nintendo Online service, like, it's a cool idea. Like, have, like, a Netflix-like subscription for Nintendo games. Like, I know I'm using Nintendo a lot as the example, but it's just because of the Switch eShop.
It's the one in the periphery.
Like, yeah, but it's also, they have a service, and I guess PlayStation kind of has a similar thing where you can access their games. And that, at least, like, it's the same controller, pretty much. Like, the DualShock buttons all work the same. So if you're playing on a DualShock 5, it still kind of feels like you're playing a PS2 or a PS3, even though the DualShock 3 is just a horrific controller that you shouldn't ever play. But I digress.
Yeah.
But to me, like, playing Super Mario Sunshine on a Switch Pro controller is not the same as playing Super Mario Sunshine on a GameCube controller. And I know that's nitpicky and all that kind of stuff, but
I value the authentic experience.
Well, and it's not just whether you're playing the game with the authentic experience or not, of like, aside from the lack of analog controllers and the fact that the button prompts look like GameCube controllers and the buttons on the controller are not GameCube controllers, like, obviously the mapping, you can train your brain to understand the mapping and all that kind of stuff. Like, that part's fine. But it's as Josh Strife Hayes says, it's like the phenomenology of it. Like, I want the experience of going to an old TV. Like, I just got an old TV. I'm going to polish it up and put it in our living room. And I'm going to hook
You're going to replace all the cathode ray tubes you can.
Yes. And I'm going to plug my GameCube and my PS2 into it. And I'm going to just start playing my little physical collection of games on that thing, because for me, playing Super Mario Sunshine isn't about, can I play it on my big flat screen TV? It's when I used to go to Joe's house and we'd sit in his sunroom that didn't have AC, and we'd be drinking Dr. Pepper after swimming in the pool for 6 hours, and we'd grind out 15 or 20 Shine Sprites in Super Mario Sunshine. Or I'd go to your house and I'd see the Final Fantasy X intro scene for the first time after crushing a Pizza Hut pizza and your brother yelling at us for turning off his MLB game. Like, there's stuff that's just baked into the memories of those games, and I don't just want the optimal way of playing it on a flat screen TV while I lay down on my couch. And I know like people are allowed to play it however they want to, but that's what I'm looking for out of gaming experiences. And when, like, I know that none of these companies are going to sit down and be like, we are going to expend all of the resources to win the goodwill of our customers by reprinting every game we've ever made at their request. I know they're not going to do that. And I'm not
I know that
dumb
they're
enough.
not gonna partner with Pizza Hut to get you a free sponsored game. I
Yeah.
know Sneak King is a glimmer in the eye of the person who needed more games for their Xbox 360.
But, like, I don't feel like I'm being irrational. Like, I'm not an irrational person. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, these companies owe us that to do this. Obviously, the best they can do for us is offer us these, like, digital libraries that we can just either pay a monthly service for, or we pay them a little bit of money and they run an emulator on our consoles. Like, I know that's like the best they're going to do for us, and that's fine. And I think the thing that Sony just did for us is they showed that not only do they not have an interest in, like, even coming close to the ideal of doing like the reprint for us, but they're also just saying, like, there's going to come a
Eliminating the
day where,
possibility.
well, they're eliminating the possibility of you, like, if there are games that come out on the PS6 that mean something to people in the way that PS2 and GameCube and Wii mean something to us, like, for us at least, we can go to Jim Bob and be like, hey, fuck you, but here's your $300 that you asked for, right?
Jim Bob, you're a piece of work, but you do have a good game.
If my daughter, if for whatever reason I bought her a PS6 and she fell in love with Call of Duty 23, and then she wanted her kid to eventually play Call of Duty 23, there's not a guarantee she would be able to have the same experience I'm going to be able to have with her, where I'm going to pull out the GameCube and I'm going to be like, hey, let me show you The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, one of the coolest games I ever played. Hey, let me show you Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, one of the coolest games I ever played.
That PS6 is going to be a brick.
Dude, it's going to be a paperweight.
Uh-huh.
And that's just such a depressing thing to think about, that I am able to pass on what I thought were the cool games. Like, I still have my copy of Pokemon Emerald. I have all my DS games. I didn't get rid of any of my DS games other than the fact that you still have my Chrono Trigger. Like, and like, there's obviously the part of like the unspoken thing that nobody's talking about, where like disc rot is a thing. These cartridges are going to die out. The battery on my copies of Pokemon Crystal and Emerald have burned out, and I need to solder in some new ones. Like, nothing's perfect, but hard drives are also not going to last. SSDs are not going to last. And the fact that these companies don't exist without all the goodwill that their customers gave to them, I would like to feel like they would at least try and do something for us. And it just
like,
hurts
to
knowing
know that they care as much as we care.
Yeah, and it just hurts knowing that they obviously don't give a shit. Oh man. So this is
you get a kick.
This is why you drink it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Realistically, I would just be probably repeating myself saying anything else.
Well, let me ask you something on the complete other side of the spectrum. Have you heard about the ship of Harkinian?
Sorry, what?
I will send you a link to the past.
I was going to say, which link?
Just kidding. It's Ocarina of Time.
Oh, yeah, I just looked this up yesterday. Yes, I have heard of this.
This, for those uninitiated, is an open source decompiled port of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time to the PC. They took the source code that I think that they either like reverse engineered or got in a leak, and then turned it into a completely like PC compatible version of Ocarina of Time. It uses a ROM to essentially reverse engineer this, get you support from mod, works with randomizers, and lets you customize assets. They've done something similar, I believe, with Mario Kart, not Mario Kart, but Super Mario 64, which is why people can get like Zero and Mega Man from Mega Man X into the game, and they have like their own utility. They're not just reskins of Mario. They do their own things in the engine of Mario 64. what is your opinion on stuff like that? Like the culture of taking these old things and not just modernizing them, but like constantly remixing them with features in weird ways, like kind of turning them into WarioWare in a certain way.
I mean, like, I'm all for like even the Pokemon ROM hacks. Like, I've been playing very slowly, but I've been playing Pokemon Sunbreak,
I'm
which
gonna get
has
back to Sunbreak one day, mark my words.
oh well, I am too. I just beat Brock, so like I'm not very far in it, but the little bit I have played of it has been awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, like recently there was that project. Like I see all these different kinds of projects all the time, but the one that I'm really excited about is that Project Dusk for
Hmm.
Twilight Princess, where it kind of does a similar thing. You have to provide it a ROM, but you can play it ultra wide, 4K. You can put mods into it. You can. The thing that made me excited about Ship of Harkinian was the multiplayer aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't
Like,
have any nostalgia for Ocarina of Time, although I have been thinking to myself that I need to do a replay of it on my 3DS, but maybe I'll just do it on Ship of Harkinian.
uh,
Um, I really like that kind of stuff's happening, and I think a lot of the reason that stuff is happening is because to some extent, like those games just once they're not supported anymore, the fans of the games just want something out of it. Like, I think the
yeah,
reason
like
that we're
they're
seeing a huge renaissance of Pokemon ROM hacks, obviously there's been ROM hacks for forever, but I think the reason that we're seeing so
such a
many
huge
of
like
them.
cultural like zeitgeist surrounding them, and I guess in Nuzlocke as well, is a particular style for the flourishes from those older style Pokemon games,
Well,
and they
that,
were
but
not
also
perfect.
like just good Pokemon games aren't being made anymore. So like if you want to play good Pokemon games, you have to go back and play the old ones. And you've already played the old ones. So if you want a new Pokemon game, you kind of have to just go play these ROM hacks.
Yeah,
Like, and I feel like it's kind of the same. The I It's not necessarily the same with the Zelda games. I know there's a lot of people who bemoan the change in Zelda style where it's no longer the Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess style, but it's the Breath of the Wild and the Tears of the Kingdom style. I personally, I'm of the opinion that I like both styles for completely different reasons. I I've borderline gone on record of saying that I think Tears of the Kingdom might be my favorite video game ever made, um, which is a crazy thing. That every time like I think to myself that might be true, I'm like, no, that can't be true, right? And then I think about it more, and I'm like, it might be.
it's a
Um,
game that might very well be too much a game. When we were mentioning, I think it was Crypt Keeper, how I said in the chat, in our Discord chat, that it looks like too much game for me to kind of make sense of
oh,
right
Core
now.
Keeper, yeah,
Core Keeper. I
yeah.
feel the same way. If I had not like been invested in Zelda prior, I probably would have felt that way about Tears of the Kingdom. Cause like, oh my god, this is so much a crap to figure out. There is an entire chemistry system to the world. I can make my own vehicles. There is an incredible sprawling environment. What am I supposed? Where do I even start? And that was kind of how I felt when I started the game. Like, there is so much for me to learn. I need to remember the fundamentals of engineering. Like, try to remember the fundamentals of CQC if CQC was basic engineering.
I remember I booted up the game. Uh, I don't know how much I should turn it into a story or not, but I remember booting up the game, and you start out on that tutorial island, and I remember first diving down into it and being like, oh man, this game's gorgeous. Like, this is crazy how big this area is. And I remember it took me a few hours to finish that zone, and then I was like, man, I'm so excited about this game, and I knew nothing about it going into it. I didn't know that there was a crafting system. I didn't know any of the powers. I I went in completely blind. I wanted to know nothing about that game. And then I remember when I dove off that intro area to go to the starting area of the actual Hyrule.
Uh-huh.
and I'm falling down and I'm seeing all these other sky islands, which
Yeah.
obviously aren't nearly to the same size as the tutorial island.
Mhm.
But then you get down to the ground and you see the first hole in the ground and you realize,
Yes.
okay, there's a world up in the sky. I know it's not as populated as people wanted it to be. That's fine.
Mhm.
And then you have this underground level that's just filled with mystery. Whether the
Mhm.
mystery pays off or not, I don't personally know. I still have so much of that game left to play.
The underground was such a cool like aspect when you're first discovering it, and every bit of ground you get is ground earned because like half the you're basically playing the floor is lava in a
Yep.
game. And like that's called hazardous floors. That's not special, but learning and creating the solutions to navigating all of it on your own was a magical experience, at least for the first few times. And kind of learning how all the landmarks and whatnot corresponded above and below ground to specific things. Like every mountain had like every major mountain had like a corresponding mine in the underground. Figuring that out was such a cool experience.
Or like,
And I think like everything came together right, or just about as far as like um, environment design for that particular game. But continue your point.
well, I mean, even just like the fact that you had the statues that were pointing you in the direction for that one mission that I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Mhm.
like, I don't know. There's obviously people who their opinions are that those games aren't good anymore. Nintendo's not going to make me my Zelda games anymore, so I need to go hack Ocarina of Time because it's the only game that's ever mattered in my life. Like, and I think there genuinely are people who are just like, I just like this game a lot,
Mhm.
and they just want more of that. And
Mhm.
I do wish like a lot of these companies that aren't going to officially support stuff like that would be open to just supporting those kinds of projects, like saying, hey, yeah, I know Nintendo's technically doing like the Ocarina of Time remake and stuff, but just being like, hey, if you want to play the original game, we're not making any money off it, so fuck it. Like, you want to have a multiplayer version of Ocarina of Time, that's pretty dope, go for it. Or
That's kind
um,
of Sonic Team's like
right.
approach to letting Sonic fans do what they want for better or for worse. But no, like the big Sonic fans have made incredible stuff, and it's gotten legitimized with stuff like Sonic Mania.
Yep. I when I was talking with classic Halo commentary about Pokemon games, one of the things that we were talking about was like, maybe Game Freak should just let people who made stuff like Pokemon Sunset or Pokemon Lazarus or uh, I don't remember if Odyssey or Unbound is one of the really popular ones, or he really liked Dark Violet, but the people who make those games, why not just assemble a team of those guys and they make the next Pokemon game? Uh, it'll probably be pretty good. Um,
Yeah, they should hire Honestly, there isn't like a lot of challenge-based Pokemon games. It's kind of just like the adventure formula, and that's it. And
yeah,
it's something I've become more appreciative of for Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD as time went on. Because those were like fundamentally different Pokemon games,
mm-hmm,
and not for the reasons I thought when I was, young, when I was the target demographic. They are basically Pokemon games that are designed as like a series of Pokemon challenges as time went on.
yeah,
Not just like, oh, you catch trainers Pokemon, but no, you get very specific team compositions in the final act of the game you have to play around. You get a relatively limited set of Pokemon to work with to kind of tell you what's what. You get an interesting region where like scarcity turns people into kind of like weirdos who steal Pokemon and do weird things like figuring out how like taking pit bull breeding and bringing that into the Pokemon world, and now you are a Pokemon therapist for better or for worse.
yeah. I,
I'm
I,
fine with things becoming different, trying different things, and I accept that not all of them are gonna land for me, at least in the time they are presented to me, because I've grown to appreciate the books I've read in high school far more after high school, even despite not reading them since then. My go to example is The Great Gatsby, which is about high school or at least the concept of popularity amongst your peers. But you wouldn't know that reading about the jazz age because you don't care about any of that stuff when you're a junior in high school.
Yeah, I high school reading obviously for me was like it was just a non-starter. If you're gonna tell me I have to read a specific book, I didn't care, which is ironic because I really like reading. I would read a lot on my own time. I just didn't like somebody telling me that I had to read specific books. And
Yeah,
I
imagine
have
if they came out with Jane in Austin, Texas.
I actually, in a similar vein, I've grown quite an appreciation for a lot of the books that I was told I had to read in high school and barely remember, and I've gone back and read them and been like, oh, this is like a really good book. I should have actually cared about this, but I was 14 and too busy playing Halo.
On that note, like, I might not have the right taste to appreciate what a game is going for in its own time, and the switch to, like, all digital all the time, fuck you if you want to play it 20 years from now, kind of removes the possibility for it. Great, I figured out a way to make this go full circle. And understanding that as my tastes change, things that were not appreciated in their own time may have their time to shine, which the current infrastructure does not allow for. Or the upcoming infrastructure, I should say.
I do wonder if we'll see a pendulum swing shift, or realistically what I think is going to happen is we're going to see a new paradigm where I don't know if it's going to be that, like, the way that digital media is enforced has to get changed, or if we're going to see a shifting of the guard where you start seeing, like, indie consoles start becoming a thing, where, like, new manufacturers come around and be like, hey, since like seriously though, what reason is there really to buy a PS6 over either, like, aside from the convenience of not having to building a PC, but at that point you could just buy a Steam machine, and if the PS6 is going to be priced even remotely near what the PS5 is, there's not really a price difference between the Steam machine and a PlayStation at that point.
Listen, I need to know if the PlayStation 6 is going to be able to do my taxes.
But, like, what are you paying for at that point? Like, outside of it being basically a PC that has a stripped down operating system on it to make it controller friendly. Like, outside of that, what is a PlayStation? What is an Xbox? And, like, outside of Nintendo just having a chokehold on their IP, and I do think that is the way that they should still progress. Like, I think that realistically, unless companies like Xbox or PlayStation walk stuff back, I think you're going to see, or at least my hope is, you're going to see a renaissance of some people being like the mod retro people, where you just have rich benefactors who are like, this is the world I want to see, where you still have consoles with physical media, but you bring it into the modern age. Like, they remade the N64 in a similar way to the Analog 3D, I think is what Analog called it. But
yeah,
it's,
like,
you have an N64 that you could still plug into your analog cables, or you could do it through HDMI, and they built a higher quality controller, and they're hiring developers to basically make new N64 games to play on the mod retro version of the N64. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing other companies come out and say, like, hey, people don't actually give a shit about graphical fidelity to an extent, you know? And with a lot of the tools out, like the Unreal Engine and whatever, not only are you having these big AAA studios just using those resources, but you're also having indie guys do that. Let's just hire a few indie studios to make games for us, and we'll make consoles, and we'll print our own discs, and we'll do all this stuff. And
We'll get our own blackjack and our own hookers.
yeah, but you have this new era of console manufacturers, and maybe we see that kind of a renaissance where it's not just indie gaming starting to take over, which a lot of people have the sentiment of there's no reason to play AAA anymore, just play indie games. And to a certain extent, I agree with that. But then it would be also like, don't just play Sony or Xbox. Now you can play the whatever consoles come out. And I'm not saying that I think that's 100% what's going to happen, but I could see a world where that's the direction things go in, especially if you have enough super wealthy people that are like, I mean, my understanding is that's kind of like how Xbox came about, is you have Bill Gates who's like, fuck it, let's go into the console market. I don't know if that's the actual story of how Xbox came around, but
listen, there was this thing that used before Windows. There was a thing called DOS, and DOS had Doom on it, and then they wanted Doom on Microsoft. So Bill Gates dressed up, carried around a gun for a little bit, and then they used that to promote Doom on Windows. I don't know if that's how it worked, but I'm pretty sure that's how Gabe Newell became rich and made Valve. There is at least one fact in that statement, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
And honestly, I wouldn't want you to. Yeah, I don't know. I think realistically, nothing's going to change, and we are just becoming boomers. And the majority of people probably hold the opinion that this is just how progress is, and you have to make some sacrifices to have this world of convenience. And we are just going to be the old man shaking our fists, yelling at the sky that CDs have worse audio quality than vinyl because it doesn't have the continuous waveform that provides this warmth or whatever. Like, or, back in my day, you didn't have a touch screen in your car or all that kind of stuff. Like, we are just I'm sure there is an aspect of that with all this ranting that people our age and older are doing about this Sony news. I'm sure that is part of it. But I think that the more you see these kinds of stories coming out, like the Amazon Kindle removing books or editing books to quote unquote fit the modern era, or you have shows being like, I remember who's the guy who made Big Mode?
Donkey.
Donkey. I wanted to call him Donkey, and I'm like, I know it's not Donkey. What the heck is his name? I can't believe I blanked on that dude's name. I remember he made a video years ago about like streaming platforms, and one of the things he pointed out was like just specifically the Pokemon anime. Like, if you want to sit down and watch the Pokemon anime, the amount of like gymnastics you have to do in terms of hopping through streaming platforms is crazy. And like that level of frustration just for streaming platforms, I know for a while has been a common sentiment from people. I know it's still not like the popularly held opinion that streaming platforms necessarily suck, because I think more people would switch over to just buying Blu-rays if that were the case, and that's still not the popular thing. Like, as much as I talk about how I hate streaming platforms and want to move over to Blu-rays, I still have a Netflix subscription. I still have a Hulu subscription. Like, it's still technically cheaper for me to just have these subscriptions than to buy every Blu-ray I ever want. Like, especially for like TV shows. It's just, it doesn't really make sense still for TV shows. But I think the more that we see stories like that coming out, not just for gaming, but for all digital media, I think public sentiment is going to change. It's just, I don't know what that change leads to. If it just turns to these corporations just going, well, we don't need your money because we have enough other people paying us, or if they do actually try and be like, okay, we tried this, it didn't work, let's give the people what they want. Or if we see a new era that is something different that we don't even know of. Like, we didn't know what streaming was going to be or digital gaming was going to be 15 years ago. Now we
No one
do.
could have predicted Archipelago and the rise of randomizers, particularly not the people who made the games they're built out of.
Yeah. But yeah, I have a feeling that this is going to be an inflection point that will either lead us towards going back to what we consider to be the glory days, or it's going to build into the new era. And I hope that the new era is a more positive one than the doomer, somewhat reality that we seem to be moving into, where it's just you will own nothing and you'll be happy for it.
Yeah.
And we can remove and or alter your media at any point in time, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I'd love it if I bought a 3D printer and they didn't tell me what I could or couldn't print. That might not be the norm moving forward. I'm considering just buying open source software to have it in my back pocket on like some dusty flash drive somewhere and seeing what I can do like years later. But I understand that like not all of this is gonna be viable or things that I'm even gonna worry about for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about for this stuff? I don't know if you got more stuff you want to do or if this is a good point to, what's it called? Call it a stream.
We can call it a stream, and then if you want to play for a bit in a more public lobby with proximity chat, we can do that, or if you're wanting to do something else, that's fine. But I'm okay with calling the stream here. I think we've rambled enough.
We have said our piece, and I would actually like to know if you're interested in trying to set up an Archipelago game at some point. Like, even if it's just a short one, just playing a game with a randomizer and seeing stuff pop up when we're on stream, like, hey, were you missing this thing? It's like, what? How did that end up there? That kind of thing.
I could be talked into it. I just have a feeling I realistically probably don't have the time for a proper Archipelago session.
It doesn't need to be like, I think you can scale the difficulty and time scale of it pretty significantly. So it could be something that's done in like 2 hour-long sessions if you set up the right parameters.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to end the stream. Thank you to whoever has come in. Sorry about all the technical difficulties that happened with the first stream. Seems like everything went smoothly after that. But anyone who comes back and watches the VOD, thanks for joining in. And I'm sure we will do a stream in the next week or two. So
you may find our opinions incoherent and poorly thought out, but that's what you come here for.
And this was kind of just an impromptu stream because I just couldn't bring myself to make an actual video after that news. So anyway, thanks for joining, and keep it tuned in.